Most Kenyans look at us as the children of slaves from a derogatory point of view.
Is there tension between Black Americans and Kenyans? Is it perceived? Is it real?
So we're already coming into the situation with some kind of resentment already there.
And it showed me that there is somewhat of a problem with Black Americans possibly moving back to Nairobi.
I just really want Black people to work together more, just understand that there's so much happening and we have to really travel and just not be afraid, pay attention and, ask as many questions as possible, but also be a part of it.
A lot of Blacks relocating to Kenya, some coming from Ghana, but majorly, of course, coming from the States. But specifically, we need to address what's happening in Nairobi, Kenya. Is there tension? Is it perceived? Is it real?
I'm relocating to Kenya.
And I want us to look at a recent interview by one of Kenya's biggest YouTubers, Lynn Ngugi, talking to a Black sister who's now relocated and runs a company in Nairobi. And then quickly take a dive to Uganda, where you meet another Black brother, Oshe Duke Jackson, Ken Ganda, discussing the same topic. And also look at the milkshake sister, Kellys, who's now based in the region. Matter of fact, Naivasha, where she's doing major farming. How much of that could be part of the tension that we are talking about today? And also look at a perspective of African history. Remember the country Liberia, an old nation that the very first slaves returning to Africa settled in, and combined with the indigenous population, founded the country, the nation of Liberia. We know how that country went up in smoke, and there's so many reasons around that. Can we compare that to some of the concerns we are seeing today? That is the big question. So we need to dive right in, explore that, and please do come back with your comments, sentiments. What are your feelings about this? Let's jump right to it.
Recently, I was in Nairobi, Kenya, and I wasn't there to do any podcasting. I was just there for a little bit of a short break just to kind of recuperate myself before I have to come back to Kampala. But I ended up meeting a guy by the name of Brother Kevin Simpson. He was here on the podcast, and he invited me to a networking event through Nairobi Nexus. And from there, I met several people, and I ended up doing some podcasts before I left coming back to Kampala. And one of the people that I met was named Tadre, and she was talking about basically how you can move and repatriate to Kenya. And I posted that podcast here on this channel. Now, the YouTube comments were all amazing and supportive. But then we posted this clip on TikTok. And the clip on TikTok, if you read the screen, it says suitable settlement areas in Kenya for Black Americans. Now, the comments on YouTube and the comments on the clip on TikTok are completely different. And it showed me that there is somewhat of a problem with Black Americans possibly moving back to Nairobi.
Live from Kenya with Khalees on her 150 acres, soon to be 300 acres of land. And in the background, you see this is actually a volcano. Very rare, little known fact. So Khalees, where exactly are we at right now?
Okay, so we're in Naivasha. We're right off of Lake Naivasha. And this is Mount Longonot here. Behind this property, on the other side of the mountain, is the National Reserve. This is all privately owned land here. And it's great, yeah, because as you see, all the animals are free and they're running wild, and we're farming, and it's dope. We're building a little community out here.
Yeah, talk to us about the intent, right? We just walked and saw the farm, saw some red onions, some yellow onions. Tell us about what's happening here and what's going to be coming.
Okay, so my plan is to do an all-sustainable luxury retreat, like a resort. So along with the farming, doing agriculture, but also having a wellness space so people can come and spot up and relax. We'll have a fine dining restaurant, we'll have bungalows. It's all just about being one with nature, being out here and trying to keep it as part of the ecosystem as possible and just making it all go together. So what I learned in California, I'm bringing here, and I'm learning so much. Like I was telling you, I've learned so much about farming and just how to keep everything sort of as natural and using all the natural resources with the animals and all of it. So it's been great.
So we're going to have the detailed sit-down conversation, but I thought it was important to give people a visual. So on this land, tell exactly what's on this land. You got farming, you got exotic animals, you have, like, what's does all encompass?
Okay, so yeah, we've got farming right now. We're farming onions. And then we've got wildlife, so just working with all of the natural resources. We've got giraffes and zebras and elands and impalas and all kinds of stuff. Sometimes you'll get blessed with an elephant walking through and the giraffes hanging out. So it's great because even like the Lake Naivasha, I think like December, January, you'll see it covered with like flamingos, and we get all kinds of owls and ostriches. It's incredible. It's literally like God's country.
Literally like God's country. I mean, the kind of property that she has, 50 acres now, onwards to 300 acres. That's massive. And in terms of just context, when it comes to land in the country, it's an emotive issue in this country. Lives have been lost, especially around election time in this country. So the political tension usually mixed into that is an explosive affair when it comes to land. In terms of a backstory, land remains problem in this country. It has never been resolved. Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, who was the founding president of this country, inherited a political system that largely was driven by the British. And though they thought he might turn on them, he actually embraced the Brits. Remember, even one of his wives was actually British. And eventually, those who were left behind still managed to sustain some of the farms that they had, though there was a lot of indigenization, but not enough to go the full stretch of what was expected, because a lot of the tribes that lost their land in that time, the Kikuyu especially, in central Kenya, and even in the Kalenjin region, the Rift Valley region, the land issue was never resolved. So though the British paid the Kenyan government money to ensure that they bought back some of that land, this was never done properly. So we have a lot of Kenyans who were displaced from their ancestral homes, some that they can still identify to date, at least their great-grandparents would identify. They lost all that. So with that background of the British aristocrats who moved here, like Lord Delamere, who owned vast land, especially in this Naivasha region that Kellis is setting up, they ran the country, and the locals were reduced to peasants and farmers, or farmhands who were helping in the farms. So because of that problem has persisted. So anytime that somebody else is trying to invest in that kind of space, it tends to be viewed with suspicion. But I think the key thing here is that this is an African sister who's come back to motherland and is trying to set up base. And if you listen to what she talks about, the wellness, the kind of foods she wants to plant.
I'm here now, I'm in Kenya, and I'm farming.
The kind of populations and people that she's likely to build as a community in that region is massive. So the opportunity to work with the local communities is there. And I think for those who are coming back to the continent, perhaps the best idea, as my sister Wakesha also says, is to actually look at the opportunity as one of integration. Not necessarily repatriation, but coming back into the motherland, integrating, relating with those who are here, building connections, building community, new community, not only, balkanizing yourself as blacks who have come back to the motherland and working alone. Staying in your own corner is going to be a problem. You have got to integrate. One of the challenges you're facing today is that tends to be political energy that is often within the country. And so the engagement of those who are coming back to the continent, even the political affairs, what would be required as support, especially by the change that the young Kenyans are pushing, the Gen Zs. the call, for example, for the president to be only a one-term president because he's been perceived as somebody who's working in cahoots with the Western powers. And because of that,
I concede.
His popularity has really gone down. And the atrocities that have been committed during this regime are things that cannot be ignored by those who wish to understand how to operate within this country. Those are realities. Wakesha talks about blacks being viewed
Children of
as
slaves.
as foreigners and all these things. And the fact that perhaps Kenyans, the locals, may view Black Americans as a threat. We know that to a certain degree, the dollar can go a much longer mile based on the exchange rate to the Kenyan shilling. It is obviously stronger. And so the buying power, like what has been demonstrated by Kelly's here, is far greater for those who are coming in the dollars. So that can cause some sort of resentment. But the sense of community, if that is pushed as an agenda, the integration, creating opportunities that bring bread on the table for blacks who are coming here, working, synergizing with the local communities will go a long way in making that a reality, making that a possibility. So that it is not just that if you are returning here, you're only seen as somebody who's just coming to deny the indigenous communities their opportunity. And remember, the economy right now is really, really very much on its knees. So the populations are really feeling pushed. And what do these guys say, at the end of this? Listen to this.
Alvin, what's this mean for Africa? Like to actually, for people to visually see things that they might not have an idea even exist?
I think we should just travel more, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, there's so much to see. I just think we should also be more educated about what's going on in the world right now. Like you said, we have wild animals, the EYL, endangered species. But I just really want black people to work together more, just understand that there's so much happening and we have to really travel and just not be afraid, This was just over a year ago that we started having this conversation, and everyone's out here doing research, and this is going to be a beautiful project, and I want people to just pay attention and, ask as many questions as possible, but also be a part of it. That's it.
Work together. Ask as many questions as possible. Be a part of it. So he's got a positive outlook towards this. I know there's sentiment from both Africans on the continent and blacks in the US, in the Caribbean, all these places. And there's that negative energy that sometimes, especially African immigrants, are viewed as, looking down on Black Americans, calling them lazy and all these things. But can we see beyond some of this rhetoric, beyond some of these challenges that we face, the comments that come from both sides? This brother is saying exactly that we should see the opportunity to work together. That has got to be the mission. You bring in your talent, your black culture, you bring in your money. We've got human resource on the continent. We've got a lot of minerals on the continent of Africa. Certainly, the young population in Africa is innovative, very innovative. You've got a median age of about 20 years, by far the youngest population anywhere else in the world. And apart from the reason that the leadership, the vast majority of leadership has failed youth, and we've seen lives lost even in the streets of Nairobi, their chance to work together still exists. And I want to send a caution, really, that we've got to remember our history. That's why I talked about Liberia. Liberia was founded by Black Americans or Africans very early on, the first generation, who are returning to the continent, to Freetown, Liberia, and ended up founding the nation of Liberia. But what happened in the end? The true Whig Party that was founded by those blacks, unfortunately, ended up being such a dominant force in Liberia. To a large degree, took up all those positions of government. And that party ran the affairs of that country until it went abust when Samuel Doe, a young soldier who is of indigenous origin in Liberia, led a bunch of soldiers, attacked the mansion where the president lived. He was brutally taken out, the most painful way, including some members of his family. And it ended up in this spiral, 2 decades of civil war, civil strife in Liberia and the region, including Sierra Leone, because certain patterns of political life especially secluded other populations, created a lot of resentment. And so this is what those who are coming back to the continent have got to look out for, to avoid the pitfalls, avoid the kind of things that happened in Liberia. And I've done a story on this before, so just check it out here. I don't know if it's here or here, but do check it out anyway. And it talks about America's involvement in the chaotic affairs of Liberia as a nation state, until we ended up finding one of Africa's first ever female presidents, Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, and helped pull Liberia out of that doldrum. And Liberia is slowly coming out of that. So if there is perceived tension, we need to nip things like those in the bud. It might be such a stretch to think about Liberia as an example, because that's rather extreme for that ever to happen in this day and age. But those are realities that must inform the affairs of Black returnees, the affairs of indigenous Africans of the continent who are likely to engage with you guys, man. Because Africa is home. It is home to us. It's also home to you guys. You came from here. We hear a foundation of Black Americans, yes. But ultimately, Africa is the place of humanity, is the birth of humanity. So the days of Mansa Musa, who traveled the world even before slavery, obviously created Black populations across certain areas, including America. Yes, America is your home and you have helped build it. You deserve every inch of that country. You built those capitals off the back of your ancestors, in the cotton fields, in the sugarcane farms. That's a reality. So they cannot take that away from you. But much the same way, Africa also belongs to you guys. It's a reality. And that those who traced their roots, I just saw Ludacris the other day, get his Gabonese citizenship. We saw Samuel L. Jackson do the same. And many others, a vast majority of you obviously coming from Western Africa. But Wakesho, for example, in her case, has roots in East Africa. Look at that coincidence. So she's called a Kenyan, which is a Luo name that refers to somebody born in the morning, a female born in the morning. So there are those connections there, man. And I think we should celebrate the commonalities that we have, the strengths that we have. If there are any negatives, we've got to find a way to work around those, to smoothen those so that we can relate as a people, man. Because listen, man, truth be said, truth be told, the one true place where you don't have to look over your shoulder every other time is definitely the continent of Africa, is motherland, where you do not have to keep proving yourself every time you are flagged down by a cop. I mean, there's corruption here that probably would be a challenge, but by far, Africa will provide you the kind of serenity, the kind of peace, and the kind of dignity that you deserve as a human being to begin with, which is often denied in the West. This is home, man. I don't know. Share your thoughts, share your sentiments. What has been your engagement with the continent of Africa? How have you engaged with Kenyans, for example, Ghanaians, whatever the case might be? And shout out to, Earn Your Leisure, these guys, the video I just featured here, Ken Ganda and Lynn Ngugi from Nairobi. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and please do share if you have any other things, suggestions in terms of content that we can bring to you. But I'm definitely very excited at the opportunity for us always to work together. But at least on the minimum, in Africa, you will feel African, despite the little differences that you'll face. This is definitely Afrocentric. Many thanks for watching, much appreciated. And please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share. Let's make some good noise about how we can relate as a people. This is Afrocentric. Many thanks, and check out the next video. Peace. I'm out.